reaching back into antiquity of the year 2000, there was a time when films would go what we would say is viral now, become a cult classic simply through word of mouth and DVD. Because a lot of times smaller films didn't get big wide releases. I'm reminded of things like Christopher Nolan's Memento, Pitch Black, other things at the time. A lot of things just kind of went viral through DVD, which doesn't really happen as much anymore. And this was one of those features. It was one of Vin Diesel's earliest starring works, and was directed and written by David Twohy, who was a 90s kind of icon. Check out this list. He wrote The Fugitive, Terminal Velocity, Waterworld, G.I. Jane, and then Pitch Black was kind of his last big hurrah. But I mean, those are kind of staples of the 90s. So he's also the director. Let's get into this story. So it's a sci-fi survival story where this kind of passenger cruiser spaceship crash lands on a desert planet, not Tatooine for once. Our band of small survivors have to try and figure out how to repair the ship and get off the planet. There's just a handful of these people. Among them is Richard B. Riddick, simply known as Riddick, played by Vin Diesel, who's a dangerous escaped convict. He's a murderer. He's a killer. You can't trust him. He's in chains and restricted. But they kind of got to depend on him because he also knows how to fight and kill stuff. Our band of survivors stumbles upon this research installation that's completely abandoned, but everything's working because it's all solar powered, and there are 3 suns on this planet, so it's fine. They're trying to repair their ship, or they're trying to find a way off this planet, and they quickly realize there is something underneath the ground, something that moves in the dark where they're not safe. They're not too worried initially because it's like, hey, this is a place of perpetual sun, and these things just like the dark. But through a solar model at the research installation, it shows that there will eventually be an eclipse, and that it's coming up eventually will shield the planet in total darkness, and all of these monsters will come out. This is where they enlist Riddick to help with the search and rescue operation and to be able to fight these things and kind of gather our troops to get off the planet. That's our story. We have really, sometimes we have good visuals, but there's a lot of style. The writing is real solid, and it does a lot on a much smaller budget. So, Zach, what do you think of Pitch Black?
So I didn't know what to expect going in. I know there are three of these Riddick features, and then an animated movie and a video game. I know that they've kind of been trying to get things moving with them, but ultimately, like, I just knew them as Vin Diesel vehicles. But I remember hearing that Pitch Black was good and has like a 90-something on Rotten Tomatoes. And I thought, okay, I'll go back and kind of see what this is about. And let me tell you, Pitch Black has a really fun opening and a really fun close and a really cool setting and world. This idea of these kind of almost like space truckers falling out of their shipping lane and ending up on this planet. They don't know where they're at. You get your kind of big vehicles gone wrong. We all got to fix it and get out of here, a la like Poseidon Adventure, Titanic, Society of the Snow, which we watched just last year, right? Like big plane crash movie. Like all that's really fun. And I love the way that everything is dialed up in the world. We don't have one sun, we have 3, right? We don't have one like evil entity to deal with. We have multiple. And also we're not completely helpless. We have a couple of basic weapons along with this super weapon functionally of a man, Riddick, played by very young Vin Diesel, who is turning it on and doing the work. And a decent cast. Rhoda Mitchell plays Carolyn Fry, kind of our lead, who was also in those Silent Hill movies. She was the lead in those. Cole Hauser is William J. Johns, who is Riddick's handler, bounty hunter, and Keith David. Believe it or not, Keith David's in Pitch Black. I had no idea. As I'm going to butcher this, Abu Imam al-Walid, who is a very religious man, very devout, has 3 sons, and is a big believer in God and what will happen. And boy, it creates a big boiler pot of potential. I think where the film is maybe weaker than its other early 2000s counterparts is in its budget, because it's like 20 million, I think maybe a little bit more they had to shoot this on. And then just, I think some of their struggles. I was going back and watching some interviews with David Twohy, and he was saying that like it was like a nightmare to film a lot of this. They shot it in Australia, South Australia. Got what wasn't actually as hot as you'd think. It was actually like 50 degrees on set. They had to spray water onto people to make them look like it was hot. And apparently a lot of issues in production make the middle part of this movie a bit messy in the visuals and geography. But Andy's right. Like, on its face, to hear the pitch for Pitch Black, to hear where it goes, hear the beats in an elevator, it works great. Like, the opening ship crash, watching this, I was like, this feels like Alien. This feels like James Cameron. This feels like something big, Ridley Scott. Like, I was surprised that it doesn't, like, ascend to those levels. And I think I see why through the later parts of the movie, but like still super fun, creates a really great setting for multiple films to come from. And I know David Twohy is working with Diesel on the next feature, whatever that's going to be after Fast and Furious 11. So like there's more story to be told in the Riddick universe. Crazy.
Right. Where this really excels is in its writing and the script. It does drag a little bit in the middle sometimes, but we have a lot of drama between our characters. We have our kind of captain figure, Carolyn, played by Rhoda Mitchell. She initially wants to, when she has to try and save the ship as it's crashing, and she initially wants to just like dump the passenger bay and be like, I'm not dying for these fools. But no one really knows that about her, and so she's kind of keeping this secret. And as are many of the people on board. Riddick himself is a mystery, but he's like warrior poet. He's very like slow and calm, and he does that very low growly Vin Diesel voice. But there's just a lot of drama that goes on. There's some philosophical elements kind of talked about. Like the script is punching above its pay grade, and that's where I think it's strongest.
It's funny. I know where it comes from. David Twohy was supposed to write an Alien movie. That's originally where this came from, Alien 3. And Alien 3 would go on to star Sigourney Weaver, and David Fincher would direct that. That's Sigourney Weaver crashing on like a prison. I don't even think it's a planet. Is it a planet? Colony? Whatever. Yes. But at the time, 20th Century Fox was looking for something to unglue the Alien franchise from Sigourney Weaver and our female lead. So they thought, let's flip it for script write-ups. What if we had a male lead for a new Alien movie? And David Twohy was one of the writers who came in to kind of take a swing at that. And that's where he kind of cooked up what's going on here. They ended up going in a different direction. They decided they wanted Sigourney Weaver. Obviously they pivoted, and he had kind of pivoted for maybe what that might be. And he kind of written like a female character that could be at the front of this, which is where I think Carolyn Fry comes from. But fundamentally that doesn't work for Alien. But the influences of that are like so obvious here in its sci-fi trappings. I love the look of the ship. I love the look of their like solar bay, these cells they got to carry. And uniquely when the film starts playing with light, I love the look of these like glow sticks they got, and these goggles Riddick wears, the shotgun that Johns' character uses to kind of keep Riddick in check looks exactly like the shotgun from the Microsoft's Gears of War games. Like the feeling of sci-fi setting works so good in Pitch Black, even more so than like the outdated CGI now, some of the goofy lighting effects, like where those things don't work well. Like I think the physical trappings of the movie just look great. Like big fan of how Pitch Black looks. Rock solid, fits the time. Obviously not quite getting like Matrix level visuals, but they didn't have a Matrix budget. All right. They worked with what they had. I think it's pretty creative.
Yeah, a lot of the physical sets work pretty well. You got this desert planet that doesn't, it's not like in Dune where you get these big sand dunes. It's just dry. There's just rocks everywhere. There's just nothing anywhere. It's really bright. There's a lot of filtering going on, but outside is incredibly bright because there's supposed to be these three suns. It kind of gets these shades of a lot of blue filter. A lot of the kind of computer generated stuff doesn't hold up very well. It didn't look good back then either. It doesn't look any better now. So it definitely has some of those, difficulties in that area. But man, it makes up for it in the suspense, the drama, the good dialogue. I remember two characters are talking, and 1.1 says, "You're dancing on razors," and I was like, man, that is a line. Like, And there's stuff like that sprinkled all throughout the movie.
Yeah, and it's not just the writing, but like I really like how the movie looks. I know I just talked about the sci-fi trappings, but like the lighting. I got to talk about the lighting in Pitch Black. There's 3 suns on this planet, and they're all different colors, which is really unique. And at first, that doesn't mean a lot. It's just going to be hot sun in the desert. But they intentionally like color shift all of the scenes outside to either be like real red for the red sun or real blue for the blue one. It's very dark in interiors when there's no sun out, and of course when the eclipse settles in. And uniquely, Riddick has glowy eyes. They explain that he got some kind of surgery from a doctor that he like paid 50 credits to, so he could have, what do they call it, Andy? Yeah, be able to see in the dark. But obviously this means he can't look directly in bright areas, so he's got to wear goggles. And then our creatures also have this sort of predator vision. And that was one thing Twohy talked about when he talked about writing the script is predator and prey. Like, because it may seem like obviously our survivors are prey for our predators on the planet, but even they have their own like problems to deal with as far as being prey. And additionally, they've got Riddick, who is a big kind of predator. But then even like Andy said, Carolyn Fry, our lead, who was going to dump the passengers and lose everybody, she arguably had control of the whole thing from the start. Like, she would have been a bigger killer than anybody. And I think that's really clever, like sets up some clever layers in your movie on top of a couple of clever twists with some characters. Not a spoiler show. I know it's an old podcast, but I don't want to give anything away. You can go watch Pitch Black. Some like clever twists in Act 3 that lead to our characters like dwindling and getting cut down over time, like any one of these films would work. And certain characters having some details come to light, I think, that would drastically change how you think of them and how the predators of the film think of them. So kind of unique, I think. Not something I expected from an early 2000s sci-fi flick.
Yeah, and I think another aspect that's interesting is we get a lot of backstory kind of later in the movie, which I think was probably the basis of what they did in future movies. Because all we know about Riddick is that he's a murderer. He's escaped from prison multiple times. We've got to bring him in. And there's a fascinating conversation between him and Imam, which is the Arabic character played by, or Islamic character played by Keith David. Keith David's very religious. He talks a lot about praying and thankfulness and all that God will guide our way. And there's a whole lot of like, well, we're about to die out here. Where's your God now? And he has this great conversation with Riddick, and he was like, do you believe? Do you not believe? And Riddick has some really good lines. He was like, you couldn't be born in a trash can and at the back of the supermarket if you didn't believe. You couldn't have gone through and survived what I have in my life. And you not be some sort of religious person or believe in something. But we get kind of insights into his backstory, into like his life of crime and prison and violence. And I imagine that I should probably watch the other two, but that's probably where the basis for what's expanded upon in the future films.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about where the series has gone since this one. I know there's 2 more features. I know that this movie, he said they shot for like $25 million in South Australia. The next movie, they had an insane studio budget and over $100 million. They could do anything. And then the one after that was financially independent. They funded it themselves, and that was like $30 million. So I'm imagining this next one, which Vin Diesel bought and owns the rights to, will also be financially independent, self-funded. Will have the energy of this first one and the third one, Riddick, which I think came out in like 2013, if I'm remembering from IMDb correctly. Why do you think this didn't have? Why do you think this one didn't quite go the distance of its like larger sci-fi counterparts, Andy? And you haven't seen the other ones, so I was going to ask about.
I have not.
I was going to ask about where you think they have gone since and where it might be going, but I haven't seen those movies either, so we'll just talk about this one. Yeah.
Well, again, we get a little bit of insight into the larger world. This is like, oh, you're in a shipping lane of, so it does a little bit of the alien space truckers setup. I think it gets a little bit more lore heavy. I just remember lots of like people in weird costumes from the trailer, but I mean, the other thing, when you get studio budgets that big, you lose a lot of the nuance. There's a lot of suspense in this movie. There's a lot of our characters are really well written. There's a lot of drama, a lot of suspense. I imagine in the larger, more expensive versions, you probably lose some of that in favor of fight scenes. Let's have Riddick be a Billy Badass and fight a bunch of people and have all these action scenes so people come see the movie. That kind of sounds like what probably happened then.
I'm reminded of like Jaws. The shark didn't work, right? And Spielberg had to like pivot and like figure out what that movie was going to be without a working shark. They shot most of the movie early, and then he was like, God, what am I going to do? So they came up with ways to shoot the shark without showing anything. That's what you do on a low budget. In a lot of ways, Pitch Black has a lot of effects, but I think the darkness really helps it. I'm betting in that $100 million+ follow-up, they probably thought, ooh, now we can show all the monsters in bright, glorious CGI light. And that does not help, I think, a feature. That might make it worse. And then I don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't want to speak out of turn. What I can say is I think Pitch Black is a creative start. Like, I really do. I think it comes from a really good script. I think David Twohy wasn't too bad at putting it together. It's messy, but he wasn't directing a lot of features at the time. I think a screenwriter and a director are two very different roles. And for what it's worth, like, he's clearly got something here that works. I'd have to watch another one, I guess. I would go check it out. I'd sit through another Riddick movie. Chronicles of Riddick, I think, is the next one. Yeah,
the sequel is it's available on Hulu if you're subscribed. It's also 2 hours and 14 minutes. Which Pitch Black is a 105-minute movie. It's the perfect length. It actually feels maybe it could shave 5-10 minutes off of it, but it's not too long. Over 2 hours of Riddick might definitely be too much. I can see why it probably was not a success.
Worth mentioning, I did watch the director's cut on Amazon Prime, and it's 4 minutes longer. So mine was actually 109 minutes, but I don't know what junk DVD you were watching.
I wonder what. I saw that and I said no, I'm going to watch the regular cut because that's what I've seen.
I know. Normally, I would have shot you a message and been like, "Hey, do you recommend?" Like, if it was something like Old Boy, it might make a big difference, like whether you watch a director's cut or not. But I was like, 4 minutes. Wow, what? How different could it be? You're not going to get that much in there. So I'm assuming it wasn't all that different. Maybe a little bit more people getting cut up. I guess I couldn't even really tell you. But any other thoughts on this one? More recommendations, Andy?
No, I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend Pitch Black?
Yeah, absolutely would. It's a classic of yesteryear, from a time capsule to the year 2000. We have this really interesting survival story. We have good characters in our kind of Captain Rhoda Mitchell trying to keep these band of survivors together and alive. We have the prisoner Riddick, who you can't trust, but you need his help to get off this planet. It's a creature feature. There's suspense. There's drama. The effects don't really hold up a lot of times, but a lot of the filmmaking does. So definitely highly recommend.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think Pitch Black's a lot of fun. I got it on VOD, but I'm sure it's on a streaming service out there somewhere. And yeah, bit of a time capsule, like Andy said. You throw on your rose-colored glasses, go back and revisit the year 2000 and see, if you weren't watching The Matrix, what were people making? And where was this going to go? A lot of potential for what's in Pitch Black. It might even be a good movie. And a good Vin Diesel performance for sure. Would recommend. Boy, and that's our episode 253 of Off Script. Andy, what are we watching next week?
Witness me, because Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is coming to theaters this Friday. I cannot wait. Our IMAX tickets already bought for this Saturday. Of course, it's going to be the follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road. 9 years... it's been 9 years since that. This is a prequel film, of course, starring Anya Taylor-Joy and Chris Hemsworth. Could not be more excited. I already have face paint. I'm doing the Imperator thing. Going to be dressing up, or not dressing up, basically just painting my face for this. Super excited. We're also going to be taking a look at La Chimera, which is an independent film starring Josh O'Connor. Not Josh O'Connell, because that's a different actor. Who we just saw in Challengers, who plays kind of skeevy Italian antiques dealer. He's kind of part of an excavation, but not like scientific. It's more like stealing old relics kind of thing. Heard a lot of good things about this. Really interested to check that out. It's available to rent, video on demand. Some other FYI releases. The Garfield movie comes out this weekend, starring Chris Pratt as the voice. That's probably nice family fun. Take the kids. If you have the time, Hitman, which is Glenn Powell's new Netflix feature, which will be out on Netflix on June 7th, is actually doing a very small theatrical run this weekend, probably just 4 days. That's coming out. And then also The Fall Guy is not out in theaters, but is actually available to rent today, May 21st. If you missed that, just not 17 days ago did it come out. It's already available to rent. And then some upcoming things. Excited about In a Violent Nature, which is the horror movie from the point of view of the killer, which comes out at the very end of the month. But for next week, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and La Chimera.
Stoked for Furiosa. Stoked for La Chimera. I've started to hear good things about that. If you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we're doing here on Off Script, the best way you can support us is just subscribe. Subscribe to the show wherever you're at. If you're listening to us on audio, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartMedia, Google Play, you can find us right there. There's some kind of subscribe button somewhere. I'm pointing in the air, implying that where I'm at can point to your subscribe button, and it can't. But you can. And you can hit subscribe and subscribe to the podcast. You can rate and review while you're at it, which helps us more than you know. Believe it or not. It's good podcast etiquette. Leave a rating and review for the ones you like. If you don't mind, we'd appreciate it. And maybe on other podcasts listen to too. After ours, though, of course. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on YouTube. Big things going on for Off Script on YouTube. You can see our full streams over there as well as clips, individual things. We've got additional content over at offscriptfilmview.com, interviews Andy's doing around the country. Believe it or not, I'm not kidding. It's a real thing. People ask if I'm kidding. I'm not. It's a real thing. Go check it out. And, of course, you can email us correspondence directly, mail at offscriptfilmreview.com. And, boy... that's our show. Go see I Saw the TV Glow. It's good. And also go check out Pitch Black if you get the chance. From all of us at Off Script, the home, Bolt Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.